I'm Olivia Schmidt, and I'm the community organizer for BARK. BARK is the Defenders of Mount Hood National Forest. We've been defending and restoring Mount Hood for 11 years. And we're out here today looking at the Jazz Timber Sale, which is a project proposed by the Forest Service to log 2,000 acres in the Kallawash watershed. The timber sale itself, this 2,000 acres, is actually cut up into little pieces spread over 30 square miles that covers the entire Kallawash watershed, which is a sub-watershed of the Clackamas River watershed that provides drinking water to Clackamas County communities. The Jazz Timber Sale would require 12 miles of previously decommissioned roads to be reopened so that logging trucks can get into this part of the forest and cut the trees and get them out. Roads in general have a big impact on the forest. They impact water quality, they disrupt habitat. One of the bigger issues I think with this particular situation is that 12 miles of these roads have already been taken out. So the money and the human resources has already been spent to rip up or block these roads that go into the forest. So the fact that they're going to come back in and reopen 12 miles of those roads, not only is it going to be expensive, but it's going to undo this work that's been done in the past that has improved the area. Like any government agency, the Forest Service needs to have public oversight so that we can make sure that they're basically following their own rules, and to make sure that what's actually happening in the forest is being reflected in their analysis of this area and of the impacts that would occur because of logging. What BARK has done for the last 11 years is gather volunteers to take them out to the forest and do something called ground truthing, which is basically civilian surveys, where we're looking at the documents being produced by the Forest Service, talking about what's happening on the ground. And what we're doing is we're basically going in and sort of fact-checking the statements by the Forest Service. So we've spent the last 11 years getting people out to the forest to survey or ground truth these timber sales, and that's a really important aspect of decisions made about our public lands. And it brings up other questions, like the Forest Service is required to go and do field surveys and cover every inch of that land. But for some sales, the comment period, or the time that that analysis is happening, those sales will be under snow. Like right now, some of the Jazz Timber Sale is under snow. So we aren't able to get in there and really meaningfully look at what's happening on the ground. You start adding up all of those impacts and you realize that the Jazz Timber Sale as one piece of a larger puzzle is going to have a devastating impact to this area of the forest, and by extension, the wildlife habitat, the water quality, and just the innate value and importance of beautiful, healthy forest.
Hi there, my name is Grady Proctor, and I'm the Forest Watch Coordinator for BARK. And today we're here at at the Jazz Timber Sale. And in just a minute, we're going to walk in and see some of the sale itself. But here we are, we're standing on a road right near Unit 2. And what we have here, this is called a berm. So what they have done is to prevent traffic from going down there is to rip the surface of the road a little bit. And what they've created right here is basically just a giant hill. And then on the opposite side of that is quite a big ditch. So basically they're just trying to stop traffic from venturing further down this way. Unfortunately, we do get a lot of ATVs and or all-terrain vehicles and motocross bikes and such. And this becomes more of like an obstacle course for them. The Jazz Sale is about 100 units, but I thought we'd go into this one here today to see more about what the Jazz Sale looks like. So here we are in presently Unit 2 of the Jazz Timber Sale. And this is kind of what a lot of the units look like in the Jazz Sale. They're 50 to 60-year-old trees in general. This particular sale is what they call restoration thin. In Forest Service speak, that basically means that these trees, after they were clear-cut logged, they were planted 50 to 60 years ago, are recovering. But what they're saying is that because it's a plantation, it's of a lesser status and that it's not as diverse as a natural stand. So what they would like to do is basically log their way out of it. But as we look around in this forest today, we can see that beside us here is a downed log. And as these old trees fall and hit the ground, younger trees and other plants can take advantage of that, because as this log decomposes, it holds so much moisture. It basically is just like a bed of compost. And it helps plants like these hemlock trees be up off the base of the floor and away from competition, and into a nutrient bed with a lot of moisture, just to give them an upstart. So downed logs are vital for the forest ecosystems. The other thing we have here is this is a snag, and snag basically means standing dead tree. And snags provide a ridiculous amount of habitat. It's something like 1/3 of all birds will use snags for homes, and about the same amount for mammals as well. So when they log these areas, we lose a lot of these downed logs and we lose a lot of these snags, and both of these are vital for animal habitat. Most species that are threatened or endangered are so because they don't have a home, they don't have a place to live.
So now we've just come across that old logging road into the Bonanza timber sale that was thinned sometime in the last 10 years. And this is a great example of the kind of landscape that we would see in the Jazz timber sale if that project goes through. Thinning, the kind of thinning that the Forest Service is proposing for the Jazz timber sale, is commercial thinning. It's thinning that has a commercial driver behind it, the goal being to get timber out of the forest that can be marketed to provide a profit. And what we hear from the Forest Service is that thinning is all about restoration. But when I think about what the Jazz timber sale looks like when we're in there, and this healthy wet forest, and nice understory developing, and this habitat being developed by the downed logs and the snags, and then I come into somewhere like here where it's just really open and relatively dry, and there's the footprint left over by that initial logging, it becomes really clear that this kind of restoration isn't what is going to help improve the habitat that already exists in intact forest, like what we see in the Jazz timber sale.
So here we are, we're on Forest Service Road 6311, and this is where the Cap Creek crosses the Forest Service Road 6311. And what we're seeing here is a significant amount of slumping. Slumping in this area is very common, and so what we're seeing here is basically just a chunk of rock that has broken off from the parent matter and just started to slump or slide down the hill a little bit. And we've seen this a lot in this area. The last few times I've come out to check out timber sales in the Jazz area, I've encountered this on every road that I've gone up. So this is a major force that's going on in the Kallawash watershed. It's a continuous process, so if this slumps off and this whole thing shifts, it's going to apply pressure to the adjacent stone, and it could cause that next stone to shift. And if that process continues, that's when we move from slumping to landslide. Because you have a rock that bumps a rock, that bumps a rock, that bumps a rock, and suddenly you have the whole hill that side that goes. So the Forest Service is actually doing some really good work right now to potentially close a lot of these roads that are experiencing slumping and other problems. And so they did an analysis, and they were going to close this section of the road in their environmental assessment. But when they came out with a decision notice, this area has been scrapped. This road could have been ripped so they could go through and till up this soil, recontour the landscape so that we don't have this landscape that goes hillside, flat area, hillside, but instead would be more contiguous and mitigate a lot of this slumping that we're seeing right now. And I know we've been having problems because we've been working with a program called Legacy Roads to get money from Congress to basically close these roads. And I think it's going to be really hard to convince Congress to give us money to close roads that are causing a lot of ecological harm if they know that the Forest Service's intent is just to come back and reopen these roads anytime they want to get back in a quality area.